Welcome to the Gottesdienst crowd, where we foster confessional integrity, liturgical preservation, and preaching that doesn't stink. We believe that the historic liturgy of the divine service is more than mere cobwebs of antiquity, but it is a true treasure of the Church, to be dusted off and brought down from her attic to be enjoyed. So let's get dusting.
Welcome back to the Gottesdienst crowd. This is Jason Broughton. Today we have back with us Dave Peterson. Welcome back, Dave.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
It's always glad thing to talk to you about the gospel. So we're looking at the gospel reading for the 9th Sunday after Trinity. It is the unjust steward section, Luke 16, verses 1 to 13. I'll read that in the New King James. Jesus also said to his disciples, "There was a certain rich man who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. So he called him and said to him, 'What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward.' Then the steward said within himself, 'What shall I do? For my master is taking the stewardship away from me. I cannot dig. I am ashamed to beg. I have resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses.' So he called every one of his master's debtors to him and said to the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' And he said, 100 measures of oil. So he said to him, 'Take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, 'And how much do you owe?' So he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, 'Take your bill and write 80. So the master commended the unjust steward because he had dealt shrewdly. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. And I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. And he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon." Okay, so generally speaking, this parable hangs up the laity quite a bit. Now, and I think it's because of the negative example, or drawing a positive conclusion from the negative example. Would you agree?
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah. So how do the Lutheran fathers deal with this? How does Luther deal with it?
Well, Luther takes it up pretty explicitly at the end of his sermon and says, "Get over it. It's not that shocking or difficult." In fact, he gives a couple of crass examples. Oh, here it is. I just found it. He says his point, of course, is not to commend the steward in everything, but simply to recognize his wisdom or cleverness. And then he says, if I want to stir someone up to be awake, pray and study, I could say, "Look, murderers and thieves are awake at night to rob and steal. Why should you not be awake to pray and study?"
Yeah.
And then he says, even worse, he says, "An unchaste woman adorns herself with gold and silk in order to entice young men. Why should you not also adorn yourself spiritually with faith in order to please Christ?" I am not praising prostitution, but the diligence it applies to wickedness.
Yeah.
So
it is sort of like that summary statement that Jesus says, the sons of this world are more shrewd than the sons of light.
yeah, I don't know if I'd rather that be translated wise than shrewd, though. I suppose shrewd, makes sense in this context. Shrewd has a negative connotation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it implies a kind of self-serving, or a manipulation. But,
applicative wisdom.
Yeah, but I think
diligence, zeal.
Yeah, I suppose it's not terrible, but I think, I don't know. I mean, we are being called to wisdom, not simply shrewd. In fact, so Luther is really against this idea of us doing something for our own benefit. So that maybe that's why I'm sort of balking at the word shrewd. So I think this is a good sermon. It's a relatively short sermon. So he starts out with basically there's 3 points that we want to make, or there's 3 attacks on the true doctrine that the Pope uses, right? And he says it's the okay, let me get this. All right, let me stop looking at the sermon and look at my notes, and then I won't be lost. Okay, he says there's 3 attacks. First of all, he says that make friends for yourself with unrighteous mammon. And then the Pope says, see, this shows that actually works are what make friends. And then second, we do works to gain an advantage. And then finally, the friends that are going to reward us are the saints. So they have the sort of authority to reward us. And so it's that second one, that we're doing works to gain an advantage, that makes me want to not use the word shrewd. I mean, in a sense, that is what the unrighteous are doing, but we're being called to actual wisdom. So here's the way Luther's sermon unfolds.
So prudence, is that a better word?
Yeah, maybe prudence is better. Yeah, but how do you say they're more prude? You can't say that. What's the verb of prudence? I don't think there's a verbal
prudential.
Form.
They're more prudential.
Well, that's an adjective, isn't it? Or adverb. Yeah, they're more. Okay,
wise.
Maybe shrewd is fine. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think they also get hung up on how can Jesus' summary statement, how can you be, if you are, how does he say it? Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon or unrighteous wealth, who will commit to your trust the true riches?
Yeah.
And part of it is that, they have a hard time understanding that unrighteous here doesn't mean ill-gotten.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Yeah. And so they see unrighteous and they automatically think ill-gotten riches instead of this kind of wealth isn't righteous wealth. It's not righteousness.
Yeah, well, Luther actually says that it's unrighteous mammon here does not mean that, as you say, it's not that it was obtained in an unrighteous way. That would be dismissed out of hand. He gives two Bible passages that I am a God who is hostile to a sacrifice that comes from robbery, Isaiah 61, and then give alms from what is yours, Proverbs 3. So he says, look, if you got it by robbing a bank, that's not unrighteous mammon that you've been unfaithful in. You shouldn't have even had that. He actually says that mammon is surplus. That is, it's a multitude of goods or of riches, and it's what you could share with others without harming oneself. And I think this is really fascinating. We'll come back to that in a second. So the unrighteousness part of it, he says, is that what made it unrighteous is that you're using it wrongly.
Yes.
And for the most part, for Luther, he sees that as a sin of omission. Not that you're using it to buy wicked things, but you're not sharing it with those who have need, even though you could do so without harming yourself.
Right.
So there's so much going on here, I think. So first of all, like in a backhanded way, Luther is actually saying that, first of all, you do need to actually take care of your own family. Right? You're not supposed to harm yourself. You're not supposed to give all of what and I mean, you could go back to the Pharisees who are, tithing in mint and dill, but not taking care of their parents. But there is this, you do have your obligations first to, not to take care of yourself exactly, though it's related, right? But take care of your family. There is a kind of hierarchy, but then there is this call and this expectation that you'll be merciful as your Father in heaven is merciful, and you'll respond to the needs of your neighbors, in kind of expanding concentric circles, right? And then the other thing that's really, or two other things that I find really interesting here is that this is primarily a sin of omission. And, we've talked about this at various times, but we probably don't speak enough against sins of omission. They are a little bit more difficult to deal with. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was this.
I contend, and maybe I'm wrong, is a lot of our sins begin with omission.
Yeah.
Like
right.
omitting doing the proper thing. And so
Yeah.
that idleness leads to doing something else.
Right. Right. Well, and I think often we think that what we're doing is being idle in a kind of innocuous way.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of our idleness is actually spent scrolling, it's far more dangerous, not just to mental health and cognitive abilities, but actually to morality and to our souls, because it's so, it's possible for it to be innocuous, but it rarely
Unlikely.
is. Right.
Yeah.
It's just, the problem is that the world's media is filled with the world's morality, or lack of morality.
That's a really great turn of phrase.
Yeah, so it's going to be hard to watch a Disney movie without getting Disney's ideas. They're going to be promoted. What is shown to be good, is, finding your own way against the authorities, your parents who are oppressive and close-minded, right? I mean, that kind of stuff. It's just, there's a lot of that, a lot of these kinds of things that at first glance don't look that terrible. But as you get into it, a lot of hay has been made rightly, I think. I don't even know if sitcoms exist anymore. Are there still sitcoms on television?
I don't know. We don't have television, so.
Yeah, I know. I mean, almost no one does, right? But anyway, like the old sitcoms, it just was so prevalent that the father was an idiot, right?
Right.
Sort of married with children, I guess, or whatever. I mean, but everybody loves Raymond. He's sort of dumb, right? The wife is obviously smarter, more sophisticated, and just, this kind of just playing up these sort of stereotypes for a laugh. Yeah. But that was the early
2000s. You had kind of a switch. I heard something about like Last Man Standing with Tim Allen. I've never watched an episode, but that he was more.
I never heard of it.
He wasn't seen as a bumbling fool.
And he was a bumbling fool in Tool Time.
Yes, right? He was.
Yeah. So I don't. I mean, look. Of course, we don't want to overreact in a sense, and condemn everything. But I think we ought to also be cognizant of what the actual order that God has established and the goodness that He's created. And sometimes, it's right to laugh at the bumbling fool, and we've been the bumbling fool. I mean, the Tim Allen, Tool Man thing was, I think it was fairly, I have to go back and look, it's been a long time, but it seemed pretty wholesome at the time.
Yeah.
And relatively, right? So, but at the same time, we have to just be conscious. So anyway.
I did have a friend who watched, I guess, The Little Mermaid, the animated version, the old version, the OG version, as they say, with his daughter, and then like all of this could be avoided if she just listened to her dad. And it was I guess he used it as a lesson to say, this is why God gave us the fourth commandment.
There you go. All right. So he found moral goodness in a Disney movie.
That was not Disney's point, but
no, that's not Disney's point. Right?
Yeah.
Love rules all. That's what.
Right.
All right. So anyway, the omission thing. So another thing that this just...
So it becomes unrighteous because we've omitted doing...
We're not
with
using
the
it.
surplus,
right?
Pressing it into service of others,
right? After we've made sure our needs and our family's needs have been met, we've had a surplus, and rather than sharing it, we've indulged ourselves in decadence, luxuries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where's that line? I mean, that's hard to know, but I think
particularly as people are saving for
retirement
or that or rainy days, when things go wrong, and that's a calculus that everyone kind of has to make themselves, right?
I think that's absolutely right. And I think even, I was thinking as I was reading this about, of course, the woman that anoints Jesus' feet, right, with the costly oil. So, there is a place for feasting, as we've often said. There is a place for mindful, right? Conscious, grateful feasting, with others in community. I mean, there are these things, but then, of course, they're dangerous. As everything is that is pleasing to the flesh, even that which God gives in order that is pleasing to the flesh soon wants to become disordered or inordinate, right? And
So, do you think this is a time also to say, instead of individually, what about like the excess of the congregation?
ooh,
Like,
tell me more.
well, I don't know if it's always. I don't know if it's the case that we, on our budgets, have excess, but are we pressing into service the gifts just to cover expenses, or are we able to do beyond that together
Yeah.
in the church? That, I mean, again, I don't know that congregations are in a position at this point, or if they ever have been, that they are like saving up and they just have all, they're just lots of capital, lots of cash flow, or however you want to call it.
Right.
And they're not pushing it into what can we do in our community with these funds? What can we do? Because I think there was an article, I can't remember in which paper, we get two papers, but of some some evangelical congregations, all of their stuff goes to like upgrading
The sound
their
system.
show equipment and all
Yeah.
that stuff, and like salaries are bloated, and there's not a whole lot of outreach in terms of like helping the lesser fortunate.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just I think that's a fair question, right? How much of our budget is just spent, to keep word and sacrament here for us? And, that's not illegitimate, right? But then how much is it actually, is it just for us? Or are we actually, do we exist for the sake of the world to be a light, in the darkness? And then, what is budgets are always revealing because they show your priorities. So, of course, as every pastor does, right, we always get this question, or not always, but we, from time to time, we receive this sort of, pastor, is there anything that the church needs, right? I want to give a gift. What does the church need? And I appreciate the question. I'm subject to all the modern fundraising realities, plaques on the wall with people's names and grant writing and, all that kind of stuff, designated giving. At the same time, I almost always respond to that question with something like, the council really works hard to create a budget. And the budget is a confession of our priorities. And what we need is the budget to be funded. So if there's something that you think is lacking, that's a congregational need, or a need of the community and so forth that we should be involved in, let's try to get it in the budget and let's give to the budget. And I'm not, binding people's consciences. You love the organ, you love the youth group, you love the Sunday school, you love, the seminary in the Dominican Republic. God be praised. And I'm not binding in any way. I'm not. At the same time, maybe when people say, what do they need? I feel like, we have a kind of leadership and an organizational process that goes on in this congregation according to our Constitution, and it results in a budget. And, I like it when people, kind of engage in that process and then support it. So but then, I think in the same way, right, the budget is worthy of examination, right? Why do we talk so incessantly about how important the youth are, but we don't have a budget for the youth? Why do we talk about how much we need to evangelize the world or support the synod or the seminaries or whatever it is, but then we don't have, right? And maybe in some places, no doubt, it takes everything they've got just to keep the lights on and so forth. And okay, fair. But it's still worth examining. Where are your priorities, and is there bloat? Some people have complained about endowment funds for this reason. I'm not going to complain about endowment funds. I mean, I could, because obviously they can be abused and so forth, but it's sort of your rainy day fund. I think at the same time they can be used not perfectly, because what's used perfectly on this side of glory, but they can be used faithfully. And, the idea that people in love, right, said, I'd like to, try to help this congregation make it through rainy days that are bound to come in the future.
Mm-hmm.
That, that's like having a personal, savings account that's got, 3 to 6 months of expenses,
Salary.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I think that's a good idea for congregations, which is kind of different than endowment fund. But, this idea to have so anyway, yeah, it's tough to know, but I think it's a totally fair question.
Yeah.
And
and I know some congregations that have an endowment fund we want to ensure that if somebody from our congregation wants to go into church work or the seminary, we want to help them pay for that.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not, and beautifully, they don't limit it to just their congregation. Like if they don't have anyone going, they say, hey, you guys have someone in your congregation going? We'll help.
That's great.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal.
So, there is, the compound interest thing is real, and taking advantage of that, I think, I'm not against interest.
Is that using unrighteous wealth is that proper use?
I think it's proper. Of course, it's not always, I don't think it's categorically wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's categorically wrong to pay interest in some cases when somebody gives you money over time. I'm against debt in general, but I don't think it's sinful to take a secured loan for a legitimate, purpose, like a house loan. I don't think it's illegitimate to get a interest in return for, certain sorts of things. It is wrong to, the kind of predatory loaning and so forth. And I there's all sorts of ways it's abused, but I don't think it's categorically wrong. So for a church to have an endowment fund that is invested in the stock market, vaguely, and then to use that, as a financial tool that supports seminary education, I think is absolutely appropriate. Mm-hmm. There's dangers along the way, but
sure.
So I don't think it's as easy as just saying, here's the 10 simple rules to kind of follow financially, and you'll be a Christian.
Yeah.
But it
takes wisdom, right? That's kind of what he's kind of getting at.
Freedom suffers abuse, Yeah. So that's the sort of other side of it. There is the reality that there will be abuses. And I'm not saying that's okay, and we don't care about that, but I do think we have to. So it's going to require more work. It's always more work to be free than it is to be a slave in that sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to bring up billionaires. This passage particularly, give alms for what is yours. I do find extreme capitalism to be just as offensive or nearly as offensive as communism. I do think this is offensive and kind of outrageous to Christian piety, that people would be this wealthy, insanely wealthy, where it just doesn't make any sense. And the kind of wasteful things that we see, the money that is spent on yachts, right? Mm-hmm. This kind of thing is just, I think we ought to be able to say that, and we should say it. And I think I also found it, I remember there was these ads a few years ago where you had certain millionaires campaigning for there to be a millionaire tax. And they were like, we need to tax the millionaires. I'm a millionaire and I say we need to tax the millionaires. And I found that kind of outrageous because not that don't want to tax them exactly, but I thought, the problem is, why don't you voluntarily give this money? So these guys were saying, I want the government to have more money so it can do more social programs, right? That's what they wanted. That's what they meant in that context. Mm-hmm. And so I think the government should tax all the millionaires in America with this tax, and then there'll be enough money for all these social programs, and that would be good. and I'm listening to this. I'm not a millionaire, so I'm under no threat here. But I'm thinking, well, if you believe in these social programs so deeply, why don't you give of your own free will? Why don't you donate this money to these things? The thing is that you only want to give if everybody else is forced to give. You want to force other people to give, and then you're willing to do it under compulsion because that, this passage.
The other side of that too is like they always have a workaround.
I know.
They don't, so they know that they can get around it.
Yeah, but maybe their other millionaires won't, right? Exactly. Right. So give alms from what is yours, right? Is really, I just think so much of what goes on in the discussion, and I don't follow it closely, but what I see in the public discussion about taxes, it almost always feels to me like people are trying to get other people to pay for stuff that they don't want to donate to or pay for themselves. So, I mean, this is the big argument for casinos and all of kind of legalized gambling. And now, marijuana. It's still illegal in Indiana, where I live.
Thanks be to God.
It's not going to last, I'm afraid. I wish it would. It already stinks to high heaven of marijuana everywhere you go.
I know.
It's awful. And it's illegal. But
things that weren't on my bingo card, my 9-year-old knowing what that smells like.
Yeah, that's right. So we don't even have medical marijuana, let alone recreational. But it's probably coming because there's all this talk about the revenue that's being lost to the great state of Illinois and you marijuana lovers over there. And Michigan and Kentucky and Ohio are surrounded.
Well, I sure would like to see some of that revenue.
I know, exactly. It's all, but
it's all false.
It's false anyway. But it's also, it's just this like despicable kind of trying to get other people to pay for our stuff never actually works.
Correct.
I think this will really maybe get us in trouble, but I think this is the demise of the Concordia University system. I think that the great failure, I mean, of course, it's a demographic reality. Small college, liberal arts colleges like that have been closing across the country, no matter what their affiliation or what they, so this isn't like some, uniquely Lutheran or Missouri Synod problem or some failure of Matthew Harrison. I mean, that's just really not paying attention to anything going on in the world. However, I do think that we did make a failure, a sort of anti-Hillsdale failure, when we started to add all of these programs. And I remember this, the sales pitch was that, Concordia River Forest, their purpose is to produce Lutheran school teachers and seminary students. That's their primary purpose. But it'd be nice if we didn't have to pay for that. And so what we could do is we could add a pharmacy program, and we could add a physical therapist program and an MBA and a women's study program and all these things. And then we'll charge them extra, right? We'll charge them more than the program costs. And then that will underwrite the church work programs, and we'll get this for free. And that was foolish. And it was probably sinful. Worse than foolish, because it was trying to give alms.
Yeah, because when I was going through Concordia River Forest, there were people who were not Lutheran, like papist or general evangelical, who were in these other programs that were on full ride scholarships, and I was paying.
Yeah.
So I was like underwriting them.
Well, because the truth is, this is just like you're not seeing the revenue from the marijuana sales in Illinois, because it never works out. Nobody ever wants to pay for other people's stuff.
It's like when they want to raise tolls. Right. It's the people who, it's the truckers, they'll pay it. Like, well, yeah, but we use these more than they do.
I know. It's always trying to get, I like the Illinois thing with trying to get the out-of-towners to pay the tolls. Yeah, everybody that's driving through Chicago. Yeah. So the locals don't have to. There's just a wickedness in this that it backfires anyway, but it's also not Christian. So there you go. The billionaires are guilty. They're not the only ones. There's something fallen in all of us that wants something for free. I was taught that that's why gambling is a sin. That was what we were taught in confirmation class, and I still believe it. That part of maybe I just wasn't a very good student in confirmation. But what I remember very vividly is being told, when you gamble, your goal is to get something without working for it. Mm-hmm. That was how our pastor explained it. So you're trying to get something without work, and that's a sin. You're
And
trying
that's
to take somebody else. Yeah.
Luther's stance, and all the Orthodox Lutheran Fathers' stances on charging interest.
Right. Same thing.
Like,
Yeah.
so trying to get something for nothing.
Yeah. I don't think
no
that's
work.
fair with interest, because I think actually
Sometimes it is.
it can be. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I think Gerhard and Chemnitz see that. Whereas I don't think Luther is as clear about it. For Chemnitz and Gerhard, there has to be some kind of risk involved for the loaner.
Right.
Yeah. And it seems to me Luther's position is just like, no.
Yeah, I think Luther would.
And maybe that's not fair to Luther. I haven't read everything
I don't know either.
that he has stated on it. But,
I mean, I think the way some people talked about this, you would have to say it'd be wrong to to charge somebody for car rental. Mm-hmm. If I rent you a car, I let you use it for time, but you don't actually own it at the end of it. You pay me without buying it. Then that's wrong, because that's like, and I think the time of the car is real. Yeah. So, but anyway, right there. Okay. Well, let's go on.
Okay.
That's actually the end of Luther's sermon. So we might as well get to
what does he focus on mostly then? Mostly
he talks about this whole thing of make friends for yourself with unrighteous mammon, what this actually means. So the first part is works don't make actually friends. They're actually evidence. So, and he brings up again the gospel from the 8th Sunday, that good trees bear good fruit. And then, I mean, I think he doesn't say it in this sermon, but he says it somewhere else. This idea, you can't just take, an evergreen tree, hang apples on it, and then that makes it an apple tree, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So fruit, you don't make the tree into something by putting fruit. The fruit doesn't make the tree what it is. The tree produces the fruit from what it is, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, a good tree bears good fruit and a wicked tree bears wicked fruit. There's just no other way about it. So, that's the first thing, right? Works don't make friends. Works are an expression of the reality that already exists, right? The love of the giver. And then he has in that same section an admonition to works that he contrasts true faith and false faith. That is, why do we have so many admonitions to works, right? Why does the Bible talk this way? Make friends for yourself, right? If you can't actually make friends by works. And he says, of course, it's because true faith will always show itself. And he's got a kind of antinomian thing here. And also this sort of, and the kind of antinomian he's talking about here is the part that just doesn't, it's a little different than it's different than kind of what I think we've experienced in the Missouri Synod mostly. Mm-hmm. It's more concretely kind of dead orthodoxy. That is where faith is simply an intellectual idea that is not lived out in any way. Mm-hmm. He's got some great lines here. There are some who listen to or read the gospel and what people say about faith and quickly begin to suppose that faith means what they think. Right? And then he says, this is what Jude calls dreamers who are deceived by their dreams. What else are their thoughts, which they call faith, except a dream and an apparition of faith, which they themselves have made in their hearts by their own power without God's grace? They become worse than before. True faith, about which we are speaking, is not made with our thoughts, but it is only God's work in us without any assistance from us. But it is going to express itself, right? Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as silent Christianity.
Does he say that?
No, that's me. Sorry.
Oh, I was like, whoa, that's awesome.
I just said this in a sermon, right? Christianity might be hidden from the world in suffering, but there's no such thing as silent Christianity or Christianity without action. So
I said something similar about yesterday, that mercy speaks.
Exactly. Yep.
And Christian mercy, that is the mercifulness of Christians, looks at someone who is sinning, has mercy, compassion on them, and speaks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. There's no secret Christianity. Right. Mm-hmm. It's right. Those who confess with their mouths. So this is really what Luther's getting at here. So what is really the role of works, right? I mean, he goes on here to say, again, just kind of typical the proper distinction between justification and sanctification. God wants us to let the righteousness that we have received in faith break forth, demonstrate itself, and benefit others, so that false faith becomes known and rooted out. God gives no one his grace so that it may lie down and be of no benefit, but so that it would give a good return, and through knowledge and outward public demonstration entice everyone to God. Christ says, "Let your light shine before people so that they see your good works and praise your Father in heaven." So that's good stuff. So he says in this first part, he summarizes it: make friends for yourselves with the unrighteous mammon. That is, plainly demonstrate your faith with external giving, by which you gain friends, so that from your obvious works the poor can be witnesses that you have genuine faith. So from there, he goes on to how works are supposed to flow freely. There's a lot of overlap between these three sections. So works flow freely really gets back again to this idea of, for Luther, faith showing itself through works. But here he does add the idea that there will be consequences for these good works, both eternal, right, the eternal reward and the glory that follows in heaven eventually, but also a temporal consequence, partial and not necessarily guaranteed, but here on earth, right?
So is he primarily focused on works in terms of things done pressing into service the funds that we have, or does he also kind of take a sidestep and talk about confession or profession?
I think he's including in this section, he's using money as an example. He means everything the Christian does.
Okay.
All good works, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, would you disagree that we tend to focus more so, or perhaps solely, on the confession profession side and don't talk about the pressing into service things?
I know, I think that's fair. In our day and age, right. I mean, he is living in a different society where, I mean, the needs and the social structure and the way that people receive aid is different than ours. And I mean, I think, this is this sort of common American Christian complaint that when the government takes over works of mercy, we're sort of left not knowing what to do. Right. I mean, I find this in Fort Wayne. What are we supposed to do about the homeless situation in Fort Wayne as Christians? And to some degree, from my understanding of how the world should work at a policy level, I'm no expert on this, but I think our local government has made homelessness worse. But they're attracting homeless people, encouraging it in some ways. And I don't want to support that. And, giving people that are struggling with this, rather than sort of mental health and addiction counseling and so forth, I don't want to help these programs, right? I don't want to fund them. I don't want them. So, I mean, we've got this, but there's this bizarre thing. I think for Luther, a homeless guy, a guy who actually has no place to sleep in Wittenberg, there's no one to help him except for the actual Christians living in Wittenberg, right? There's no other the church is going to do it, and the church is called to do it. So it's weird when, we've got empty beds at homeless shelters in Fort Wayne pretty much every night, but then, the people don't want to go there. So what are we supposed to do? Right? I think that's a strange thing, right? If somebody else is, and I think this is a little bit related to when, now I'm trying to remember where it is. Is this Jesus that says, no, it's in Paul where, right, true widows, right? Who are the true widows? Look, there are false widows, that Paul is dealing with, that the church is dealing with. Women who are trying to take advantage of the sad realities of their lives, not by sort of employing their own agency and discipline and, bearing their crosses, but just wanting charity of the church. And he says, look, they should go, they have a responsibility. Their families should take care of them. And they shouldn't be widows if they don't need to be. And that sounds harsh to us, but that's what he says. And I think it's a demonstration that there are kind of false homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
And there are false, beggars who actually aren't in this situation. They have, it's not that they're not in the situation, but they have the means to escape it, but they don't want to because it's too costly to them. Like, I'd have to be sober? Yeah, you'd have to be sober. And so if you refuse housing, because you don't like the rules, that seems to me you're not a true homeless person. So this gets complicated, I think, and it's difficult to sort of see our way through. I don't think it's fair. It's not right for us to say, well, the government's going to take care of this, and we don't have any sympathy, and we're not going to put ourselves on the line. But at the same time, I do think we have to be shrewd with this as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm once in a while. I did it recently, but I. Maybe twice a year, I'll give some homeless guy some money. But I almost never do. And I get,
I don't give out cash. Like if I'm able to, I'll say, I'll buy you a sandwich.
Yeah, I've done that too, but it is easier to give cash. And sometimes, the timing and so forth.
Sometimes like I actually have to get somewhere and have to do something that I've been called to do, but I just have a rule that I don't give out cash.
Well, I just have a rule that typically I say call 211, right? And hilariously, and I do this weekly. I'm doing it multiple times, sometimes in the same week. And hilariously to me, I've never once in 30 years told someone about 211, and the person's been like, "Oh, I didn't know that existed." Every one of them knows about it. Every one of them. So 211, if anybody doesn't know, is the sort of government. It's like 911 for assistance, physical and other assistance. The government runs this. You dial 211, and somebody will pick up the phone, and you say, "I can't pay my electric bill," and they tell you, "Here's the 6 programs we have to help you pay your electric bill. I don't have enough food. I need diapers." All that stuff. They got it all sort of. There are ways to it. And it's kind of funny to me that that the people that come to, maybe there's somebody someday this will be different, but typically they come here and they're asking for money, and they already know they've already used those programs, or they've already been told they're not qualified for those programs, and they've burned the way they always present themselves. I've just not had any, it's always as though there is no place else I can go for help. I need your help. You're the sole person that can help me. Right? My mother won't help me. My sister won't help me. The government won't help me. My neighbors won't. I'm nothing, nowhere. I've burned every bridge. And by the way, I'm not ignorant of any of those other possibilities. Mm-hmm. And so, I got a few questions. How did you get into this state?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty cynical, and that's not good, but it is somewhat necessary.
I don't know that's being cynical. Hopefully it's drawing out a confession.
Yeah.
How did you get into this state?
Right. How is it that none of your family will help you anymore, and that you don't qualify for any of these programs in the city? And it's like, so there's a whole pattern of behavior here, and this kind of difficulty. So that is a difficult situation, I think, to be a Christian. It's hard to know, because we don't want to be wasteful with the resources that God has given, so that we can't help people who actually need it. So most of our benevolence, actually all of our benevolence, is limited to our own members or family members of our members. When the homeless guy, when I just for whatever reason feel like I'm kind of, that just comes out of my own pocket. It's not very much, and it's not very often, so that's no boast. But the church does not provide any funds for that, for the homeless people that knock on the door.
Our Minister Alliance does for transient.
Yeah, that's a good. I was involved in one like that I thought was a great program, where they had to go to the police station.
Yes,
it was administered through the local police, and so I loved that. And most of the time they wouldn't. They're just like, nope, not going to go. Tell the police. Huh? Why is that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Here's an offer of a hotel room, food, gas, and everything that just seems like it'd really help you, get to this job offer that's just 100 miles away. It's your last ditch effort, and
Yeah,
but
because you
it's
got to
not
warn it.
because you got to warn, I guess. Yeah. So. All right. Well, that's where he goes with that. The works are supposed to flow freely, and then he says, right, we can expect and should expect to some degree even a temporal reward for this, right? But we're not to look to the reward, but to the good life. And he doesn't say this, but I'll say it. I think it's what he's getting at, is that we should love what God loves, and we should love what he commands. Right? We want to be part of this. We want to do these things. And actually, here is where real joy, peace, and contentment comes from, right? Money, I mean, the cliche is money can't buy happiness. And I mean, it's true, but the problem is none of us fully believe it. We sort of think it could. And we know it doesn't work for other people, but we think maybe we could be the exception and we'd like to do it. And it's so vain, but we're all guilty of it, right?
Well, I mean, we're like this for a lot of sins, like, 6 commandment sins, living together, cohabitation. Like we recognize that the rules apply or the stats show, but we are above it.
Yeah. Oh, you know where else we are? It's conflict of interests. And nepotism. Those are another 2 things that we're like, oh yeah, that's really bad when other people do it. But of course, just because I have a conflict of interest doesn't mean I'll act that way.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. But it's just a very risky reality.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It is funny that the double standard is just comes so naturally to the fallen man. So that's Luther's second part. Third part is, of course, it's not the saints who reward us with eternal life, obviously. It's God who welcomes us in, right? And again, for the millionth time in this sermon, the works are, of course, evidence of a living faith. And those who the beneficiaries of this generosity or the good works that we perform, they're witnesses. They're not literally the givers of eternal life, right? Which is, again, pretty obvious, but that's the way Luther goes. And I think I think this sermon's pretty preachable. I mean, obviously it would have to be edited, but I think you could take this sermon, or at least a part of it, and preach it in today's context, and it would be worthwhile.
So, is that the direction you think you're going to go? Try to
I don't.
edit this? Oh, okay.
I think I'm going to go.
What did you have in mind?
Well, at the end of this pericope, so I don't really want to deal with the parable again. I've done it a lot of times, and I like. I love digging into these details and thinking about some of these other things. But at the end of this, I was really struck by this whole thing about he who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much, and then especially with a kind of correspondence to this. Passage from the epistle, 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape that you may be able to bear it. So that passage, right? No temptation has overtaken you except as is common to man. I think it's an important passage. It is for me that in fact you're own
not unique.
Right. Well, and I think that, that in some ways
that is a common sin for us.
It is. You wanting to be
no
special.
one has ever been through what I've been through.
Right. But I think it also works in the opposite direction. So I think there's the arrogance that thinks, right, I'm suffering. Nobody knows what it's like. This is so messy and difficult and painful, and I've been so egregiously insulted. There is a vanity, a kind of entitlement thing there. But I think on the other end of it too, there is a kind of shame that thinks that somehow other people are better. I see this especially with because people hide their family dynamics and dysfunction, and I'm glad they do to some degree. But then there's this idea that somehow all these other families have got it all figured out. Right. Oh, look at that beautiful family. And look at how pious they are and how good everybody is. And no, listen, I mean, we all go through seasons, and there's times when things are better and times when things are worse. But the truth is, nobody is spared the bad times. And the things that you're enduring and suffering, the difficulties, the pain, the sorrows, the betrayals, the injustices, your failures, your regrets, right? This is common to man. And and I think that is at least good to know, if not exactly encouraging. Of course, what is encouraging is the next part. God is faithful, and he will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. Sin is not inevitable, right? And the thing is that when we get into this sort of self referential despair, and kind of inwardly turned and just filled with whether it is shame or regret or sorrow, a kind of refusal, a pride that won't turn the other cheek, this kind of feeling of insults. What happens is you're hurting, you're hurting yourself and you're hurting those you love. And sin is not inevitable. You can avoid it, and you can avoid some sorrows. I mean, sin does actually make things worse. And there are some sins, the more kind of egregious they are, the more disordered they are, and the more outward they are, they can complicate things, more greatly. So, I think there is this, no, I don't think, there is this promise, right? You don't have to sin. God does not tempt you beyond what you're able. So every sin is resistible. He does not put you in impossible situations. And he, in fact, makes this way of escape that you may be able to bear it. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to sin. But I think there's a great kind of comfort in this, that he's actually on your side. So here's just a...
So would you then add to that, given the fact that we're not unique, you are not going through anything that isn't common to man, is Paul in some way pointing us to our fellow man for aid?
Oh.
And so pushing back against the vanity and pushing back against the vain, that we would confess and let our brothers be faithful in a little to help them through.
I think that is beautiful and true. I was not thinking that, but I think you're absolutely right. If no temptation has overcome you except as is common to man, then other people have endured and suffered this and have wisdom that has been gained.
Yes. And then you have the whole wisdom theme that comes out in the gospel reading.
Yeah. No, I think that's excellent. I think you're absolutely right. I've never thought of it that way. That God's faithfulness is
the Holy Spirit just came upon me.
That's good.
No,
right. That's good. And maybe that's, in fact, explicitly the way of escape, that you may be able to bear these things by not bearing them
obviously
alone.
in prayer, but then he puts us, he sets the solitary in a home.
That's
and
right.
when we're going through those things, that's our knee-jerk reaction, is to think we're alone.
Yeah.
But we're not.
And
we're
either to
in
be
the household of God.
And too proud to ask for help.
Correct.
Right. And then a kind of becoming hypocrites, pretending that everything's
putting on airs.
Well, I mean, here you have 1 Peter 5, resist him, the devil, steadfast in faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world, right? And then again in 2 Peter, the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment. Mm-hmm. So you've got. I mean, there are a lot of promises here. Mm-hmm. A couple of them there that have to do directly with brotherhood. I was going to just read some of them. Deuteronomy 7, therefore know that the Lord your God, he is God, the faithful God, who keeps covenant and mercy for 1,000 generations of those who love him. Jeremiah 29, for I know the thoughts that I think to you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope, right? He's not, it's not a trap. The testing of the Lord is not a trap. He's not going to allow you to be tempted beyond. Mm-hmm. 1 Corinthians 1:9, God is faithful, by whom you were called into the fellowship of his Son. Hebrews 10, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And then 12, you have not yet resisted to bloodshed, striving against sin. So there's a lot of passages here that bring up this language of God being faithful and bringing us through. I like your brotherhood thing, though. I think that's really...
Well, there's a certain sense, like in some, I think we've talked about this before, like in the gym, we want to get to failure, right? Because that's where growth happens. And yet we hide the failure. And I get that instinct. But what if we were honest, like had extreme ownership for it, so that not only we benefited by the learning experience, but those around us did?
Absolutely.
And well, that's kind of like what Memento was meant to do, like having older and younger. I mean, this is St. Paul with the older men and the younger men, and the older women and the younger women. They have wisdom to share, and we spend a lot of our time like we don't want to intrude, and I think that's a right sentiment, right? We don't want to butt in, and we don't want to become bossy and naggy. But at the same time, if we do have wisdom to offer, it's negligent not to give it.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think, this it's so much. So the old have to be careful to not provoke the children, right?
Right.
So, I mean, and they have to recognize their own kind of weariness, right? And the zeal, be called back to zeal and to vigilance by the young.
Yeah.
But my daughter was just ranting last night about, and I mean, I think she's pretty young, but she's, I don't know, 30 something. She's early 30s, but she was talking about these young men who are dissatisfied with their work situation. Mm-hmm. And it's because they're in entry-level positions and they don't want to be, I mean, this was her analysis, right? But they're in these entry-level positions and they're resentful of those who are older than them who are successful. And the ones who are older and are successful, and she was speaking from a very specific work experience, but the ones who are older and successful are telling the younger ones, well, you got to really work hard. Mm-hmm. And in some sense, that doesn't seem like very useful advice, but it's actually born of wisdom, right? They got to this position by working hard in the entry-level positions and not complaining. Yeah. And fighting it through and sort of devoting themselves to it. And, and eventually it was rewarded. Mm-hmm. And she was talking about, these young men. So she's working there. She's in an entry level position at the time also. Right. And they're complaining and they're resentful of these people who are successful. And they're just grousing about, oh yeah, well, they say this, but they can't believe that those people actually achieve something by hard work. They think somehow those people got a lucky break, right? Mm-hmm. And those people had some advantage. And why can't I have an advantage? Why do I have to do all this kind of hard work? And it was just funny so she's talking about this, annoyed by it and ranting. And she says that besides the fact that they're going to be unsuccessful in their careers and probably change careers many times because they can't be satisfied with, anything but being the leader. But the other thing is no woman will find those men attractive. Yeah. And she says, if you're a man and you talk that way to a woman, that woman is going to immediately think you are lazy. And even if what you're saying is true, she won't believe it. She will dismiss you because of this. Mm-hmm. And I said to her, I think she's right, that this is women will not find this attractive. I said, men won't like you either. I mean, right? This is just a way to make yourself unlikable to everyone. Yeah. So it's got. So I mean, I think I was thinking about this in terms anyway. So
I mean, working hard could be explicated.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So the problem is that exactly. So this advice of work hard is actually, I think, derisive, right? It's not actually sympathetic. It's not constructive, and it needs to be like you have to actually mentor and lead, and you do have to hear you have to hear their complaints with some compassion and sympathy. It can't be, but I mean that's where the kind of divide comes. And anyway, it is tough. So, but I think you're right. We have to learn from each other, and there is a mutual. Old men, I'm speaking as one, absolutely benefit from young men and their zeal, their energy, their excitement. And we do need to learn to listen to them and to be rebuked by them, or to receive remonstrance and to recognize. So it's got to go both ways. But I don't know. I actually, of course, I would think this because I'm an old man, but I actually do think it's easier for young men, I think, to receive the wisdom of old men than it is for old men to receive the wisdom of the young.
I think it's,
but maybe not. Maybe I'm just.
It depends, right? It depends on the posture, not the posture, but the. Are the old men dismissive of the young men and their where they're at, to say, like, do they understand the feeling?
Yeah.
And I think the same way when it comes from the younger to the older. If the time is spent to really understand where someone's coming from, even though you don't agree with it, you can at least the other person who's being, brought to task about something feels like they've been heard. And there's a lot to that. That goes a long way.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And again, we can disagree, but we've got to try to, it sounds kind of schmaltzy, but we have to try to see it from their shoes.
Yes. No, I agree. I think we absolutely. And, you cannot just tell the young men to shut up and do what I say, or just to work harder, or, and nobody is ever moved by, it was harder when we were your age.
Correct.
Right. It might be true.
Well, in some ways, maybe, in some ways not.
So, right. So, that just doesn't matter. I'm, saying, if the Vietnam vet says to the Afghan vet, it was worse in Vietnam. That just doesn't help anything. And it's probably not true anyway, because nothing is overtaking you except as is common to man.
Mm-hmm.
So
do you think like this is, so in our day, it's like, again, it's common to have the hearts of the sons turn to the fathers, and the hearts of the fathers turn to the sons, and mothers to daughters, and daughters to mothers?
It's common. What do you mean it's common to do that? You mean it should, or you mean that's
the common
need?
Sin, the need.
Yeah,
is,
right. Yes.
Like in every generation, there are these disconnects between the fathers and the sons, and the mothers and the daughters, and the mothers-in-law to the daughters-in-law, and the word of God has come to turn the hearts back.
Right. I do think the burden falls on it. Of course, the burden always falls on the older. Yeah. That is the price of leadership. Yeah. Right. And that is the duty that comes with experience. Yeah. And, it's not an even burden. We do hold the father. We expect the father to behave better than the son. Mm-hmm. If the daughter that slams her door, and yells, "I hate you" to her mother, right? Yeah. That's an egregious violation of the fourth commandment. But it's unthinkable that the mother would respond in kind and slam the door and yell, "I hate you" to the daughter. Yeah. It would be more offensive. Correct. And that's because the mother is expected, right, rightly, to behave at a higher level. Mm-hmm. The standard is the same in terms of, but the expectations are greater. That's why I love the table of duties so much, actually, because it doesn't matter which one it is, applies to everybody, right? The standards for the pastor are not unique. This is the same path that husband of one wife, blameless, right? Vigilant, sober, right? Given to hospitality, apt to teach even. All of this is just standards for Christian men, Christian women too. Yeah. It's just that the pastor is held it at a higher level, but the same sort of thing. So I was going to say,
because in actuality, every man should be training for the possible eventuality of not only being the pastor at home, but if called upon, to be the one to do it in their community.
Yes.
If God calls him to do so.
Well, in fact, I've often said, and I think it's worth repeating, right? I think every Christian man is actually duty bound to consider the office of the ministry, at least to think about it, right? I mean, you very well may be. I mean, obviously, for them, it's not the majority of Christian men that should go into the ministry, but I think that it would be, even as it would be like, I mean, what boy doesn't think about being a policeman, a firefighter, a soldier, right? The president. I mean, thinking about being a pastor ought to be exactly in that same list, right? It's an honorable, good position. It's a necessary sacrifice, and we ought to be considering at least the possibility of it, and whether or not it aligns with our abilities and our gifts, and our. So.
I had this interaction with Bruss, and I think my brother-in-law had this interaction with Edgar. So my brother-in-law has 4 boys. I have 3. And we were talking one time, and they were like, oh, so you've got 3 boys, you got 4 boys. It's like, would you consider one?
Yeah.
Like, look at your boys to see who they are, what their character is, and could you help raise one to be a pastor?
Yeah. I just had this.
I mean, just asking a dad of young kids to think about that. I mean, my brother-in-law called me and we were chatting. He's like, I never thought about that. Like, I just never thought of, like not choosing one, but being a dad to say that's open and they're not just going to be on the farm or they're not going to just do whatever. I thought that was a great ask to consider.
That was Jared, the Marside guy we talked to. I just did this. In fact, he might end up listening to this, but I just had one of our members who was talking about, he has a bunch of boys and was talking about what's he going to do for high school. And I said, well, I want you to send him to our high school because you need to be preparing him for the ministry. And, we need to prepare right. He's got this boy's got the capability, the capacity for it, the talent, and the spirit. I mean, the personality, just the whole bit. His other boys do too, but I mean, I'll take more than one for sure. But, it was, his response was, and the mother's, it was beautiful, actually. They were like, I was like, you got to make this sacrifice. And he says, I don't think it'd be a sacrifice. I think it'd be well, who wouldn't want his boy to be a pastor? And I said, well, it's a sacrifice because he's not going to live here. It's like sending him off to war. I mean, not in the same way. I get in the same way. I don't want to, take anything away from the men that do that. Because we thank God that they're willing to make these sacrifices and their parents. But it is like giving your son to your country. He may not come back. And in terms of the ministry, the chances of him living close to you, right,
are slim. And so it is a sacrifice. And, the chances of him being wealthy and achieving some of the things you maybe dreamed of, renown in the world are kind of low too. But that's so stupid anyway. Who cares about that stuff? Yeah, the world is always changing.
He's going to be, it's a good life. The only real sacrifice of sending someone into the ministry that matters is that he'll be away from the family, away from the community in that sense, and he'll be given to another community. And that's tough. And that's a sacrifice. The fact that he'll suffer in various ways, well, so what? I mean, he's going to get to study the Bible, and he's going to actually have in many ways, the best family life possible. I mean, the best potential for family life possible. So,
yeah.
Well, I didn't think that went a different way than I expected.
It often does, doesn't it?
It does. It's funny. So we were, as we often do before we started recording, you right away jumped into how this is not one of your favorite gospels and you don't look forward to preaching this one. And it was funny that you said that because when I was reading this Luther sermon this morning, I set a timer to do that because, it's not like my favorite stuff to read all the time. So I have to just focus and don't do other things. And, but I was actually really filled with joy while reading it this morning, and just thinking again because I didn't start off thinking I was going to enjoy it, and I probably didn't enjoy it for the first 5-10 minutes. But it's astounding how when you spend time with the Word of God, that you're hesitant to start, but once you're into it, it's so, how many times after we stop the recording on these do we say to one another, "Wow, that was a lot more fun than I expected."
Yeah.
I mean,
Almost
practically
every time.
weekly. Yeah. So it is, I don't know. I think that's just worth acknowledging the reality. There is a certain kind of, it's work, right?
Yeah.
To study, to read, to prepare, to have to, I mean, there's a deadline and there's pressure. There's all those kinds of things, but what a joy it is, really. And I mean this sincerely. It is a privilege. And it really is a deep honor as well to be tasked with this and entrusted this.
For sure. Well, on that note, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We'll pick up next time.
All right.